Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. My guest today is Allan Napp, chairman of the Madison County, Illinois Democrat Party. Mr. Napp was elected chairman in April 2014 at the party's annual convention. The voters were the 126 elected precinct committeemen from Madison County. He replaced Jim Stack, the Democrat who carried on for the late chairman, Matt Melucci. Previously, Allan Napp served as an elected precinct committeeman and then as chairman of the Godfrey Democratic Township Committee. Mr. Napp is an attorney. He began his legal career as an assistant state's attorney in the Madison County State's Attorney's Office, working in both criminal and civil divisions. He's been in private practice for the last 21 years. Mr. Napp is married to Circuit Judge Kyle Napp of the Third Judicial Circuit. Chairman Napp is here today to speak about the Democrat County organization and what he hopes to accomplish as its chairman. Allan Napp, welcome to Conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here.
I appreciate
it. We've talked about you being here, but
yes,
now here you are.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So, first of all, I guess we ought to just start out with what is a chairman of a county party, and what's the function?
You do a lot of work and you don't get paid.
Well, that's politics.
That is.
A lot of people who aren't in politics don't understand that. They don't understand the volunteer nature of our political system.
Hours, countless hours, but so from a county point of view, we are lucky. Now, smaller counties like Bond County, which is in our circuit, so I can use them as an example, they have 27 precincts. We have 225 precincts. So in Bond County, the chairman might be more involved in planning a picnic in Greenville. In Madison County, we segregate our county into townships, or in certain areas there's groupings of townships. So I work with 11 township chairmen. And we have Alton and Granite, Collinsville, Edwardsville. Those are the big ones, and then we separate some of our other townships into the East End or the North Central. We also have Namioki, Shoto. So what's nice is below me there is another group of township chairmen who help in the organizational nature. Another thing that Madison County has going for them is that we have a long history. We've been at this for over 100 years. So a lot of our infrastructure is already set up. A lot of the planning has been done year after year after year. We try to get our voters involved in the democratic process, and we try to get our candidates and our elected officials involved with the voters as much as we can, so they get to know one another. It's nice to come to a fish fry in Godfrey and meet your sheriff. It's nice to go to a picnic in Troy and meet your county board chairman and your recorder of deeds. And there's of course fundraising, and fundraising is endless and ongoing, and it just escalates every year what it costs. For instance, a countywide mailer might cost $40,000. That's just mailing to Democrats and leaning Democrats.
That's like a postcard you're talking about, or is that a letter?
That's a postcard, and you do get a postage break for doing a postcard. But yeah, that's a $40,000 problem.
Now, where would $40,000? That's a lot of money. Where does $40,000 come from?
What I just said, the fundraising efforts that are endless. The candidates raise funds themselves. The party raises funds.
I guess my question is, okay, you're raising funds, from where does this money come?
Your people that buy a ticket to the Fish Fry in Godfrey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the JFK dinner. Last year we had our 50th annual JFK dinner.
Mm-hmm.
That raised $30,000, netted $30,000 for our cause. So that type of thing.
There's a lot of, well, there's a lot of money in politics. You're absolutely right. And it takes a tremendous amount of money to get elected to what used to be considered small offices. But now huge amounts of money are being dedicated to it, isn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would say that a candidate hoping to run countywide would plan on spending no less than $50,000 and very possibly $250,000, depending on the climate, whether the race is contested or not, or how heavily the race is contested.
And there used to be that even like circuit judges, there wasn't really that much of a political race for circuit judge positions, which are elected when there's an opening, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. They're elected if there's an opening, and then there is retention votes after that.
Yeah, I would like to say a word about that because I don't think a lot of people understand how our judicial system works in the state of Illinois. But in this circuit, which is made up of Madison and Bond counties, now some circuits might have 8 or 12 different counties in them, but ours has 2. We have 9 circuit judges, and those 9 circuit judges appoint 13 associate judges. The circuit judges are elected the first time by the people, and then every 6 years they run for retention. The associate judges are appointed by the circuit judges, and they come up for reappointment every 4 years.
And they're appointed, as you said, by a vote of the circuit, or is it the chief?
The vote of the circuits, vote of the 9 circuits.
And how do they decide? I mean, there's all kinds of people who are. Do you have to be a lawyer first of all to be a circuit judge?
Yeah, yeah. That's it.
Okay, so you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
And do you have to live within the circuit, or you can be outside the circuit?
You do have to live within the circuit.
Okay,
correct.
So all the lawyers that live in the Third Judicial Circuit are technically available to be appointed as an associate judge.
Yes, that's correct. And
how do they decide, okay, you and not you?
Well, you know, if you go through the courthouse and look at the old Madison County Bar composite photos from when I could say even when I started practicing, there might have been 75. There's probably, I knew this once, the Attorney Registration Disciplinary Commission has numbers on it, but there's over 350 lawyers licensed to practice out of this county. But your circuit judges are going to know most of those lawyers, and they're going to know if they're good lawyers or bad and responsible, hardworking. They have a pretty good handle on it. It might seem daunting, but it's really not. One might practice in front of another court or another, you know, there might be a criminal lawyer who's applied, and the judges can talk, but they know. Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, you know personally one of the now circuit judges.
I do.
Your wife, she was appointed as an associate back in, what was it, 07?
Correct.
And then got elected
12.
In 12. So she must have done well.
She does. And you know, the ISBA, the Illinois State Bar Association, puts out polling to the lawyers in the county. And the first question is do you practice in front of that judge? So that, you know, if you don't, then you don't fill out the rest of the poll. But she always scored extremely high on those polls, and she's hardworking, smart. So yeah, she's lucky. She's lucky, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Right.
But you had in your law office, wasn't there another partner in your firm that became also an associate?
Just the most recent appointed, second most recent appointed judge, probably the smartest lawyer I've ever met.
Who's this?
His name is Philip Alfeld.
That's right. Yeah. I remember reading about it. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah. His father was state's attorney of Greene County. He's brilliant. Yeah, and he's applied many times and over the years, and he was able to get appointed. And I think his ISBA poll, which just came out for the pre-retention, I think he did fantastic, which doesn't surprise me.
Now that brings us to the Supreme Court of the state of Illinois. And I know we're talking about stuff that is not really part of the Democrat Party, but yet it is, because you don't think about elections for a Supreme Court judge, but in Illinois, we do that, right?
That's correct. Judges run on a partisan ticket, but then they are retained nonpartisan,
So
which is what you would hope would be.
Coming back to what we were talking about earlier, money, huge amounts of money. We had, when it was Justice Carmeier in his first election when he was running, and I forget, who's he running against?
Mag.
Yes. There was all kinds of money being thrown into that, wasn't it? I mean, we're talking millions of dollars.
They say it was the most expensive judicial election, at least at that time, in the history of the country. And that doesn't surprise me.
Would you explain to the audience why there needs to be that kind of money spent for a Supreme Court judge of the state of Illinois?
Well, there doesn't need to be that kind of money spent.
Well, it was.
And it was. And if you believe what you read, if you trace the money the best you can, you'll find that Justice Carmeier received large amounts of money from what was called the Civil Justice League. I think it was a PAC that was created for this. And Justice Mag received, he was a justice because he was an appellate court justice, received large amounts of money from attorneys. So, yeah, they both had their bases, and they were both going to put as much money in it as they thought it took to win.
And Mag was the Democrat?
Correct.
And Carmeier the Republican.
Correct.
And eventually Carmeier won.
Yeah.
And I think he's just recently won
retention.
Retention.
That's right. I think they get retained. That would have been in 4, so every 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good process. The retention, it should be nonpartisan. I appreciate that. It's enough. It's spaced out enough for the circuits and the appellate courts and then the Supreme Court, where they're not campaigning or fundraising, which is kind of what you want as well.
Yeah, out of a judge, I was hoping he'd spend most of his time, working on the law instead of on trying to keep a job.
That is true. That is absolutely true, and that's what they hope to do. And it's frowned upon for judges to directly solicit the money. So what you usually have is a campaign committee.
Right. Well, that's the way it used to be. I mean, at the beginning of our country, I know you know this, that people didn't run for president. They were, put forward by other people.
Abraham Lincoln didn't solicit votes himself. People wrote letters on his behalf.
Right. And George Washington, he was the guy, when they wrote the Constitution, he was the guy they were thinking of as president.
Yeah.
Same with Adams, Jefferson.
It was considered bad form, right, to
want it. It was bad form to want it. You had to, okay, I'll take it.
And then from then, it was still bad form to say, hey, would you vote for me? Right. You had someone next to you saying, you really need to vote for this fellow.
Right. So coming back to reality now.
It was fun, wasn't it,
yes.
where we were?
Madison County is a Democrat county. It has been a Democrat county since the 1960s. I can remember when Homer Henke, I don't know if you know that name.
I do. I know him. He's a gentleman.
Yes. Was the only Republican that sat on 29-member county board.
Herschel Bean and Homer Henke.
And now, but the Democrats are still in charge. Your group is still in charge of making decisions about the county.
Yes.
County board chairman is a Democrat, and what is it, 19?
Well, we have 18.
18 now?
18 Democrats, 1 independent-leaning Democrat, and 10 Republicans make up the county board. Right. And you really have to be proud of them. They operate under a balanced budget. They have cash reserves. Where throughout this state and our country, Has Detroit filed bankruptcy yet? Are they on the verge? Our county is rock solid financial, and you have to hand it to the county board for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had Alan Dunstan here, the chairman, and he was talking about how there is no debt in Madison County.
It's unbelievable.
It's just paid for. But then he went on to talk about some concerns that he has about the new governor's proposal to cut the state budget, which apparently is going to have some negative impact on the county, which has already met its obligations and paid all of its bills. Can you explain to people what that's about?
Well, you know, the new governor was elected because he wants to, he was stumping for fixing the state's financial problems.
Right.
And he's apparently trying whatever he can to do that. And he's a Republican, and I'm not going to fault him. Whether these proposals, you know, you aim high. You start out your negotiations. You don't walk into a car dealership and pay the sticker price.
Right.
Who knows what the governor really plans on doing? How many of our school districts just went on the financial watch within the last 10 days? I think five of our school districts in the county. And there's not that many school districts in our county.
Why all of a sudden have
because
they
of the funding. The governor's talking about cutting funding to the schools, just like he's talking about cutting funding to municipalities and counties. Not that a county is a municipality, but I meant cities, county level. Before we throw in the towel and all move to Canada, let's wait and see what the legislature actually does. He's trying, understand that. Hopefully they work together, they get a good solution, and we start moving the ship in the right direction. It will cause a lot of municipalities. I've been a municipal attorney for years in Alton, Godfrey, Alhambra, Grafton. It'll cause a lot of these municipalities significant financial harm if that state funding that Chairman Dunstan was talking about is cut.
Yeah, well, did I not read recently that that the pension fix for the state of Illinois, which they worked very, very hard to pass, has just been ruled unconstitutional by the Illinois Supreme Court? Am I correct in that?
Yes, the pension is part of the Constitution, and you can't change the Constitution. I mean, you can, but it takes a constitutional convention.
Right, you can't do it legislatively.
And it would be like coming in and saying that you no longer have freedom of speech or freedom of religion by legislation.
So what did the legislation say then that the justices found was not constitutional?
Changing the tier program of the pension. Again, I firmly believe that they'll be able to fix that. It wasn't, the problem with the legislation that went through wasn't a major problem in the Supreme Court's eyes. And I hope that they'll be able to change it and reenact very similar legislation. That again, that right the ship and get it going down the right path.
But the reason that they did that was, at least the stated reason, was to somehow reduce the debt of the state of Illinois, which apparently is, well, it's large.
It is.
Compared to, you know, the income of the state. And something needs to be done. I mean, I talk to people all over the country, and they, you know, Illinois is well known as a state that has some serious financial troubles.
Yeah. Unfunded mandates. And we've moved away from unfunded mandates, and that's a good thing. Without any new legislation passing unfunded mandates, again, we get the ship pointed in the right direction.
Now, the Speaker of the Illinois House, I believe his name is Madigan, has been for some period of time.
And before him, it was a fellow named McPike from Madison County, Illinois.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But he's been there for a long time. He has a lot to say about what the budget of the state of Illinois is going to look like. Does he have some things in mind? Have you spoken to him or heard anything of what, you know, because the leaders of the House and the Senate are both Democrats, and so, you know, the governor has to work with them.
Correct.
And so I'm just wondering if they have something, some
and
sort of an idea that, all can come to.
And they absolutely do, and they will. And Quinn, our former governor, was a Democrat. Legislature, as you just said, controlled by Democrats, and they bickered constantly. It's the executive branch versus the legislative branch, I think. And in the end, they come to an agreement. And again, they're trying to point the ship in the right direction. I'll quit using that metaphor, but,
No,
that's the best way to put it. I mean, we're in a sea of debt, and we need social programs. The schools need the funding. The municipalities need the funding. We're working on problems that were created years ago, if not decades ago, and they're just now coming to fruition. So,
well, my greatest fear is that, on a given day, all of a sudden this money just stops because, we just don't have it. And all of these organizations, the schools, the social welfare programs that are anticipating money being fed into their accounts, suddenly it's not there. That's my greatest fear, and that's a real formula for social unrest.
It is. It is, and I don't think that this group would let that happen. It's certainly not going to happen in Illinois first. You're going to see it happen elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe the federal government, which is like...
There are places that are in much worse shape than we are.
Yes.
Not many,
well,
but
California
there are places.
was the one that, but they recently, I don't know, they passed some law where they increased their taxes, and now I hear they're doing, I don't know this for a fact, but I hear they're doing, financially they're doing better anyways.
And Illinois is financially doing better, for that matter, than you would have placed us at 6 years ago. Yeah. It's not an overnight fix. We can't undo what took decades to get us into. Everybody used to have a pension. Pensions are great. I'm a big fan of pension. I wish I had a pension. But that was an animal of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s into the 80s, and that's not really the case anymore.
Well, back when Alton was a manufacturing center, Granite City was a manufacturing center. There was tremendous amounts of wealth that was being created, and then all of a sudden that came to an end back there. I mean, remember they used to call us the Rust Belt and all these companies.
I believe we still are. We still are the Rust Belt. Yeah.
Well, I would hope we're past that already.
Well,
somebody should have scraped off the rust and put a coat of Rust-Oleum on there by now.
Plant trees, yeah. There's trees growing where Owens, Illinois used to sit. So you're right.
I mean, I suspect that we really need some sort of overarching plan which would bring the idea of wealth creation to the fore, because the more we don't have any problems that money can't solve, and the more money that we actually create in the state of Illinois, the more we're going to solve our problems. So what do we do in order to start getting that manufacturing going?
We
they
have
can redistribute into the unions too, because that's how we used to redistribute wealth in the United States, is through wages.
We have to find the lamp and rub it and hope that the genie comes out. Because as long as your neighbor goes to Walmart to buy the cheapest TV that was made in China, we're not going to fix the problem that you just described.
Right, because they're paying them in China, and they're living quite nicely over there. Well, especially based, well, first of all, we got about little less than 5 minutes left. So if there's something that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered yet, please say so.
Well, the Madison County Democratic Party, I would think, in the eyes of a majority of our residents, or let me rephrase that in the opposite. A majority of our residents, I hope, can connect or have similar ideals with that of the Madison County Democratic Party. We're trying hard to be progressive. We're trying hard to mold ourselves and adapt. For instance, a lot of people tie gun control into the Democratic Party. And I would say in Madison County, you won't find
No, you won't. You won't.
greater advocates for gun owners' rights than you will among the Democrats in this county. There has been a lot of finger pointing about our judiciary. And I think that that's just subterfuge. I think it's smoke and mirrors, because we have, you know, I'm again preaching my wife, but the other 22 judges are all extremely bright. Our court system generates funds for this county that keeps their taxes down. And that is something, you just talked about business, and this is a whole nother show, but there's a lot of asbestos cases filed here. That is a business. That is a business from both the business owner's side and the injured.
Billions of dollars we're talking about here.
And that is a business that is really good for Madison County. It's fair. No one's crying foul. No one's saying that they're getting an unfair deal here.
I go back so far that I remember the day that they actually opened the asbestos courts in the basement of the old court building before, you know, before they had done any of that work. They had to clear all the boxes out, and they knew there was going to be all these attorneys down there, so they actually used the basement down there so that they could put enough of the, you know, the judge up at the front and this battery of lawyers down there. And it's been decades now, hasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And there used to be, and I don't know, there's still a lot of river cases that occur in Madison County. I know at one time that was Madison County.
Jones Act, yeah, Jones Act. And so, yeah, you know, but again, the perception is that the court system is somehow unfair. And if it were, there would be a change taken, and there's not. So I think, again, that's a lot of masking a separate issue, that trying to paint too broad of a stroke with a brush.
Well, here in the last 30 seconds, I'm going to just say this. I remember when I was young in Madison County, it was a sleepy, sleepy courthouse. There was, like, you know, some drunks that, you know, jaywalkers. And I went off to the Navy. And by the time I came back from the Navy, my very first day, there was a daylight bank robbery right downtown. And the court was now filled with all, Madison County has had a really sea change over the time that I have lived here. Thank you very much for coming in to visit with us today. I certainly appreciate all that you've had to say. We'll have to have you back another time. We can actually talk more about this judicial stuff.
I'd be honored.
Thanks. To my audience, I've been speaking with Allan Napp. He is the chairman of the Madison County, Illinois Democrat Party. Hopefully you learned something about what the Democrats are doing here and about the judiciary. We would like you all to know that this show is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so if you want to show it to your friends, just go to YouTube, type in Conversation with Lee Presser, Allan Napp, and you can see this. See you all next time. Thanks.